Just 1 week to go until the NFL draft. Today we're breaking down the tight ends and the running backs and all the latest news. Let's do it.
With the 31st pick, the New England Patriots select.
Welcome everybody to Patriots Draft Countdown presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light is the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. And guys, we're just a little over 1 week out finally. I know it seems a little shorter this year because we were at the Super Bowl. So, Ev, was it?
Still long.
Did you get through it all right? I mean, this process of the draft, do you feel like you've gotten a handle on this class?
I think I'm there now. You know, I had a little panic set in when I started working on the draft because of how late of a start we got. But that caused me to really cram even more, I feel like, into a short period of time. So we're in a good spot now. I think we got a feel for the thing, Mike.
I know. I'm glad we got Paul here. Paul's someone who's used to picking near the bottom of the first round. The rest of us were like, hey, where's our top 5 pick? But
Paul,
this is familiar territory for you.
I mean, I'm just glad they didn't decide to push the draft back because Evan wasn't quite prepared yet.
I'm getting there. I still have maybe 8 guys that I really need to get to over the next week, but we're almost.
Yeah, it is challenging a little bit, and I can only imagine, in real life. In other words, the actual personnel department.
Oh, the people that matter, you mean?
And it's the coaches, because the scouts obviously are doing all their work all year round, regardless of the caliber of the team. It's the coaches and whatnot that are getting caught up to all the information. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a different dynamic. Belichick used to sort of, quote-unquote, complain about it, and Vrabel has been the same way. They're playing catch-up.
Yeah.
But at this point, you're caught up.
I think you rely a lot on your... Elliot Wolf was talking at his pre-draft press conference about the coaches list. So the board kind of goes through the scouts and goes through the personnel people that have been focused on the draft, and then they only really try to give the coaches a refined list of here's 8 to 10 guys at your position that we want you to watch, instead of here's 50 at your position that you want you to watch. So you rely a lot on those scouts to get the list down to a comfortable limit. And then he mentioned that Mike Vrabel has taken all of the lists for the position coaches, and he's watched every single position. Whereas maybe if you're Ashton Grant, you're only watching day 3 quarterbacks.
There's 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, right. And so your job might be a little bit easier than Doug Marrone, who might have to watch 50 offensive linemen.
Yeah. What about you, Tease? Where have you landed here with this draft? How are you feeling?
It's not my favorite draft. I thought it was going to be edge, but the past couple of days, I think they're trading out of the first round. Yeah. I just think it's one of those drafts where you try to get depth, and I don't think we're going to get a pick at 31, personally.
I mean, I don't think it's crazy. We've talked about it a little bit, Paul. If they just traded down a little bit, I mean, you lose that 5th-year option, but maybe you pick up, another day 2 pick.
Yeah, I don't hate it. Generally, I'm anti-trading down, but this draft, this class, I think Matisse is right. I don't think it's stocked with a bunch of can't-miss starting caliber players. So if the right opportunity presents itself. Now, the big question is, I think, in regard to that, is Ty Simpson. Does he sort of entice someone to move into the bottom of the first round to go get him? And we'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
There's always that mini run of wide receivers, usually late first round, early second round receivers too. That would be the only other spot. Now, I know Patriots fans hear me say that and are they're going to trade out of a wide receiver pick that. Let's not do that again. But Ty Simpson, or if they're not in love with a Denzel Boston, or someone like that, and they end up having a team that's maybe picking at the top of the second round that really likes Denzel Boston, then you could see that sort of thing. You don't really see trade ups for non-premium player positions that, like a guard or something like that.
Yeah. All right, well, this is our last show before the draft, at least live produced show. But we got the tight ends and the running backs, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. Tight end, good group. Patriots probably going to tap them.
The running backs, man. I tried.
Evan did his best. He still gave us some running backs. But first, talk to Paige Dimakos of the Draft Network. She gave us her take on this draft as well as her A.J. Brown take. So check that out. All right, we're excited now to be joined by Paige Dimakos from the Draft Network. Paige, thanks for joining us here just over 2 weeks away from the big draft, finally.
Yeah, I think it's that time of the year where it's silly season, right? That's what I like to call it, where there's a lot of information that's being leaked by anonymous sources, right? It's that time of the year. And a lot of what's coming out is done in a position to for getting guys to go up and down the boards, right? That's how this goes. 99% of what's coming out is coming from a team trying to get somebody to actually believe what's coming out so that they can get that guy in a better spot, i.e. the Jordan Tyson conversation that's happening happening right now.
Right.
So that is that time of the year. I cannot wait to get to Pittsburgh so silly season ends and we can actually start making some real picks. So yeah, I'm very excited for this. This next 2 weeks is going to drag on. It's going to feel like a month and a half. It always does.
Oh, amen. Well, before we get specifically in the draft, I mean, you had a great take, I thought, and of course, AJ Brown has just been kind of hanging over this Patriots team. I want to say feels like going on 5 years now, but specifically now to the spring, it seems like things might happen. We've been circling this. I think we're all questioning, is AJ Brown the answer? But I want to know your thoughts on if the Patriots should grab AJ Brown.
I've been pretty consistent on this, and this is a no for me. I don't understand any team evaluating what his behavior has been like over the last 2 seasons and thinking to themselves, yeah, it's going to be better for me. You're talking about a Super Bowl champion, a team that absolutely dismantled the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl in an embarrassing fashion for KC. So you think about that and the toppling of Mahomes and go, wow, the Eagles must really have just been so happy, riding high, feeling good. Oh no, we're reading books on the sideline that year. Like, we can all pretend like that's a normal thing. Everybody who's covered football or played football or been around football knows absolutely damn well that is not true and that is not a normal thing to do, not normal behavior. Now, you've had Jalen Hurts, who's a great leader and a more reserved guy who hasn't been combative with AJ. But who's to say that any other quarterback is going to handle what has been going on with AJ better? And for me, when you're talking about the young quarterback of Drake May and going into year 3, an important and very crucial year, I don't want disruptive behavior in my locker room. I don't want somebody who's coming in and culturally disrupting or thinks he's the leader. You need to continue to build off of what you have. You need to have a guy that continues to make Drake a better player, and continues to help build him as a leader. And as much as I trust Mike Vrabel to literally handle anything inside a locker room, I just don't think that he wants this problem. Honestly, I don't. And there are a lot of great receivers in this draft class who you can build and have part of your culture. And I just look at this and go, what is going to make him happy, right? Super Bowl champs. If that's the expectation and you're not happy, what are you going to do, right? I don't know what's going to make him happy, and I don't want to deal with Madden chats and all the shenanigans that's been going on with AJ. He's a very talented guy, but it's at a certain point, when is enough enough? And the Boston media, I think, would eat him alive.
Well, and it's all hanging over the Patriots, and you look at the draft, they're down at 31, kind of a no man's land of picks. Usually you're waiting to see maybe who falls through the cracks. I got to admit, it's hard to see. Do you draft a guy in the draft and then that takes Antonio, or takes Brown out of the equation? What do you see down there at 31st overall? And I mean, I got to admit, there's a guy named Boston. I mean, Boston, that seems like a pretty good fit for the Patriots. An outside guy, some size. What do you think of not only him, but just generally that spot for wide receivers with Concepcion, the others that might be there?
I like KC a lot. I like Denzel Boston a lot. I think there's a lot of depth at the position, and I think they're going to be able to get a guy that they really like at the 31. Honestly, I think they're going to be able to sit there, stand pat, and be able to evaluate on their draft board who do they like and who's the highest guy there at 31. I do think they're going to get a guy that makes a difference. I think they're going to get an instant impact starter. This is a nice class to come into when you need receiver. There's a lot of very good impact day one guys. I've spent a lot of time around all of them. Most of them were out here in Phoenix training at Exos. Of the top guys, I think 10 of the top 12 guys were all out here. Just a real alpha group of wide receivers. Really a lot of depth from how they all can run really the whole route tree, how they can be used, how versatile they all are, really how great they all were in college and how good the tape is coming out. This is a really good class, and I like Denzel Boston. I think obviously with the last name, it'd be a fun little storyline there. Casey Concepcion, I've spent a lot of time around. I know his agents really well. Just the integrity of the player, the character, and just how much he just loves ball. Like, there's certain people that you talk about that, I've been in the draft rooms and I've heard the conversations. A lot of this is about football character, especially in this NIL transfer portal era that has made it even more difficult to find out who really loves ball. And that conversation's happening more than ever before inside every franchise. And Casey's one of those guys that, just loves the game and is gonna put it all out there. And I think the exact type of guy that a Mike Vrabel would love having in his locker room.
The other position I want to ask you about is just the edge. It's a big need for the Patriots. Obviously they have had some transition at that position. There's some question of Harold Landry, how healthy he's going to be coming into this season, but it's a really good class. Cassius Howell, a popular pick. R. Mason Thomas, a guy that I really like, as well as Gabe Akis. Three guys that seem to have that Mike Vrabel, kind of vibe of effort and finish. Just what do you see from this edge class? And, what do you think there? 31. I find myself feeling like they got to trade up maybe in the second round to get one of these guys if perhaps they were to go wide receiver first.
Yeah, if they go, to me, I think there's two things that can happen at 31, and it's going to depend on how they stack the board. And it's going to look at the edge class and the receiver class, the two classes that, luckily for Patriots fans, this is the two deepest positions coming into this draft class. So it's nice when you evaluate this that your positions of need line up with the positions of depth coming out of this draft class. So I think if you are at 31 and Cassius Howell's there, it's going to be very hard to walk away from that conversation. Even as much as you need a receiver, I think you might wait on the receiver and you go in the second round to get a guy, maybe like a Malachi Fields from Notre Dame, somebody else who we really like at the Draft Network. So I think the reality is you're looking at a couple of different guys that could be there at 31. Are you going to be enticed to maybe move some of those later round picks, right? That you've got a bunch of 6th-round picks to package something together to be able to be a little aggressive. The team that I'm most interested in is if we get past 16, right? And the Jets don't take Ty Simpson, which I do not think that they're going to. I really do. I think they're going to be able to hold off. Now, Woody Johnson could throw a wrench in that plan because at any moment in time he can decide, hey, I'm going for it and I want a quarterback. But if you get past 16, that back half of the draft's going to be all-time conversations because there's going to be a lot of people calling to try and entice the Jets, the Cardinals, some other teams that are quarterback needy to come up. And I can see the Patriots doing that at 31. If they're not in love with the guy at 31. They're not in love, which at 31 in the first round, you got to love a guy. You really do. You got to love a guy. If they don't love somebody, they could move out. And I wouldn't be surprised. Would not be surprised.
One other position I want to ask you about there at 31st overall is just tackle, in which, seems like there's just a need for tackle across the league. Really hard position to develop. Is that a potential, a Blake Miller maybe falling to that spot, someone like that? I mean, I know Patriots are say they're set with Will Campbell on the left side, Morgan Moses, continuing to power through. I mean, he played every game last year, but tackle is a long-term need. Could you make a case to take a tackle at 31st overall?
I think if Blake Miller or Maxi Anature are there at 31, it'd be pretty difficult to walk away from either of those guys. I will tell you, Max, I just interviewed last week at ASU's Pro Day, a guy who literally started playing football. He was a JUCO basketball player, started playing football, picked up the most difficult position on the football field in offensive line, in my opinion, and is so just entrenched in his love of the game right now because it's still so fresh that I could just see. I mean, I was there. I watched Mike Vrabel and Max have this moment, obviously, that everybody captured on camera of the two of them going at it with hand placement. And I could tell that Vrabel had stars in his eyes when he walked away. Okay. That's what happened. I watched it. I saw it up close and personal. And I made a joke with him because I was like, oh, you were loving that, right? Like that was a great moment for everybody, but he lost himself for a minute. It was like, oh yeah, I'm just playing football again. And I talked to Max afterwards and he was like, that was an unreal moment. And I was like, of course it was. Like it's a head coach who's just coaching in the Super Bowl that's taking you one-on-one to teach you. But the thing about Max is I had him down at the Senior Bowl watching him in the one-on-ones. And every single D lineman, I talked to Zion Young about this. I talked to Chris McClellan about this. I talked to Caleb Banks about this. The toughest guy they faced, every single one of them said, Maxi Anature. And to me, when you talk about his position versatility and how much he can do, the depth that you need to compete at the high level for offensive line, I would not be surprised if they went with either him or Blake Miller. Both really good guys who I think could provide a lot of depth for any team in the NFL and definitely deserving of a first-round pick. So if they don't, I could see Vrabel going in that direction because there's no such thing as overdrafting offensive linemen. You always need to protect your quarterback, especially your young guy. And as much as Drake got hit last year, I would say I'm not mad at all if you go in that direction.
Just one more for you, Paige. Is there a certain player or position group maybe in this draft class you feel like you're particularly passionate about, or maybe you feel like hasn't been talked about enough? I mean, we touched on, maybe 2 of the 3 biggest position groups, but what about for you? Is there something we're not talking about enough, or a player that maybe needs more mention?
Yeah, I think as much as I love Kenyon Sadiq, I also like a couple other tight ends in this class, including Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt, who I don't think is getting enough love. I'm really excited about that tight end group. I think maybe I'm a Chicago girl, so maybe it's me coming off of watching Colston Loveland have a massive impact. But we're not talking about just Colston Loveland. We're talking about Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, Brock Bowers. The last few classes of very impactful tight ends, especially for these young guys and quarterbacks turning the corner. We always joke about what's a quarterback's best friend, a tight end, a young quarterback having a really good tight end that they can check the ball down to, they can count on to block and be a part of the game. So to me, Kenyon Sadiq is, when I say a freak of nature, there is no the fluidity, how athletic he is, how easy it is for him to do everything is unfair, honestly. As you watch him, you're like, we are not the same. You're just athletically a different version of human, because I can't do what you do. And watching him was just prepared for the combine was insane. But I think this tight end class, I have a lot of love for. In this corner class, honestly, there's a lot of the guys that I really like in this corner class as well. A lot of good smack talkers, which is a prerequisite for me when you play the position. And a lot of guys that I got to see down at the Senior Bowl that I really like doing real football stuff. So it's hard because this time of the year you get to the combine and all that. It's a whole lot of stuff that actually isn't football. I like to go back to the tape. I like to go back to Senior Bowl and think about the actual football moments that mattered for each of these guys. And if you look at those positions, I think there's a lot of opportunity to draft some good players.
Great stuff. Well, Paige Dimakos from the Draft Network, thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys.
All right, it's time now for our final positional preview here of the 2026 draft season. We're talking tight ends and running backs. 2 positions I'd say have very different probably levels of need for the Patriots. I think we should kick things off though, Chris, with the running backs. And
something like that.
Why don't you set us up a little bit? We got, Ramondre, Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
And we got a fullback too. What do you think of the
you
current roster?
got a couple fullbacks. You got Jack Westover. You got Reggie Gilliam.
Westover, Madison, hero.
Yeah, Westover, Madison, hero.
And Brock Lampy, right.
Brock Lampy too, of course, could come back. I mean, Patriots, I think the Patriots are stacked at fullback right now, but the running back room, I mean, you might want to add a little bit of depth. I mean, you got both guys, you don't know what direction you're going to go here with the draft. I mean, could be looking like more of a day 3 sort of area for the Patriots.
Maybe a flyer.
Yeah, could be a flyer,
Yeah, 4 or
but
6 round picks.
yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah, right now.
Am I crazy though? Because I do kind of have like a little bit of something I like with the running backs right now, and I just kind of like the 5'8", 220-pound guy, like the bowling balls. Like I want some short yardage guys. Like I think that's maybe a role that I could see at the running back position. Maybe taking a guy like, all right, he's never going to be an every down bell cow kind of a guy, but if we need 1 yard, this compact little guy is going to be able to get it for us. I'm just talking specific types, though.
Okay, all right. Well, I have one name in mind for you with that description, but I have to say this first. This is the worst running back class I've ever seen, and I'm saying that in the nicest possible way. But I've been covering the draft since 2017. I have not seen a running back class this bad before. Besides Jeremiah Love, this is a rough group, and especially when you compare it to the group last year, which was absolutely stacked at this position. Like we're talking about a group last year that had like Cam Scadaboo as like the 10th or 11th best running back in the entire class. Cam Scadaboo might be the 2nd best running back in this class. Love is an elite prospect. He's a blue chipper, maybe the best player in the draft. But after that, it gets rough. And his teammate from Notre Dame is not bad, and Mike Washington from Arkansas is okay. But then you start to kind of, get into some dreads, some dark times with this running back class. You guys know how much I love the draft. I slogged through this group of running backs. I couldn't do it. It was that bad. That being said, there are a couple of guys, I think specifically you're looking for a third running back that maybe has a skill set to either do Deuce's thing, like short yardage, or catch some passes out of the backfield. And I think a big thing, too, for the Patriots is going to be kickoff return ability, because as that third running back, whether it was Terrell Jennings or Dearness Johnson or whoever, Antonio Gibson, that third running back was a primary kickoff returner for this team last year. So that spot's going to be involved in returning kicks. So, Damon Claiborne, Adam Randall, players like that can do that, I think are going to have some value to the Patriots. But if there's some guys that you guys like, I'm not saying don't like them. I'm just telling you that this is not a good group.
Let's talk a little bit about Jeremiah Love, too, just at the top, because, he ran a 4.36 at the, he's just an absolute beast. He's going to come in and change a team. I know I've seen, less so with the Kansas City thing lately in the mock drafts, but, some team's he's one of those backs that's worth a first-round pick. And then what? Are we going to the third round before the next guy gets picked, maybe?
Yeah, I think, his teammate there at Notre Dame and Mike Washington, I think probably have a chance to go top 75, top 100. But, it's slim pickings, after Jeremiah Love. He's a great player. And, we've had some great running backs the last handful of years, Ashton Genty and Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs and players of that caliber, and I think that he's right in that category with Saquon, Bijan, Genty, true blue chip elite prospects. The running back value, we did this with Genty last year. Where does that fall? Genty ended up going 6 to the Raiders, so maybe that's where his ceiling is. I think the Titans have to think long and hard about it too, where they're picking those. So they're 4, right? If I'm not mistaken. So maybe Tennessee.
As my voice is going. We finally reached Evan's breaking point. Go ahead, Tease. Who you got?
All right, I got three guys, just because obviously running back's not the biggest need for us, so I'm just looking at something different.
Yeah.
So I had Mike Washington really just swing passes, don't let him get outside. A guy that you might like is Le'Veon Moss. Just he can block short yardage. But the one that sticks out to me is Eli Heidenreich. Is that pronouncing that right? Heidenreich. He's the Navy guy, but he's a bit of everything. Jack of all trades. Can play slot, running back, probably a little tight end. He tied the school record for receiving touchdowns, which isn't a big deal at Navy. Career rushing yards like almost 2,000. So receiving yards.
Maybe
so.
a slot receiver though. I think that's
he's if. Not only just because of the Navy thing, but just also the role that he projects to play. If Bill Belichick was still here, this would be every single mock draft under the sun for the Patriots would have Eli Heidenreich in there.
He's just a damn good football player.
He's really smooth route runner out of the backfield, I think, is what stands out the most with him. I think he's a pass catching back, but he does play a little bit of receiver as well. I think there's some lazy Patriots of old comps there, like a Rex Burkhead or something like that, but that type of player. But like I said, if Josh McDaniels still wants to use a running back in that capacity, like Bill Belichick did, for 20 plus years here, we would just be spamming the Navy running back if he was still here.
That being said, though, like you've mentioned, this isn't a great running back class, but at least that's the one position you can pick some dude up off the street. Right. So there's some free agency options out there too.
Yeah, a couple of guys I like to kind of piggyback off of Tease. Jadarian Price, we talked about him behind Jeremiah Love. I mean, he wasn't Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame, but he's a stud running back in my opinion. I think he's a solid playmaker. He's more of your ground and pound guy, kind of used his strength to his ability, but also has the speed and the ability to kind of break free and get himself downfield really well. You see him a lot of breakout plays from him this past season. And Jonah Coleman from Washington, also another guy.
That's Deuce's guy. If you want 5'8", 220 bowling balls,
it's about him. It's about him.
Your man.
Not afraid to find the end zone, that's for sure. I saw somebody scored 35 touchdowns in 50 games playing in college football.
Not afraid of the end zone. He'll go right into it and score that touchdown.
No, but seriously, big playability, a lot like Jadarian Price, big playability guy, like something that can provide a little bit of a spark. I just really like.
I like Coleman. Coleman's a good one. The other one I had was Katron Allen, which is similar kind of, maybe a little bit bigger, but pile mover, those kind of guys. That was kind of the traits I was looking for, but. I feel like I have a block on running backs. Like I just every year, and it's not even specific to this being a bad class. It's just that's like the one position. Every time I watch it, I'm like, I don't know. He looks, it's like you can tell how big or small they are and how quick they are, but otherwise it's like, is it going to translate? You kind of have to get here. But Ev, give us anybody you want to take us home on there?
Yeah, so I think the two guys that they've showed some interest in are Adam Randall from Clemson, who is Cordero Patterson 2.0. Like he's just a 6'3", 230 converted receiver. Played receiver early on in his career at Clemson. Had to move to running back because he doesn't really have the ball skills to play receiver. So he was kind of. I think I don't really have to say much more than Cordell Patterson. Like it's literally the same player.
Yeah.
It looks very similar. 6'3", 230 with a 4.5. Great straight line speed. You can throw him little swing passes and screens and things like that out of the backfield, getting going in space. I really like it when they threw him some like little downfield kind of swing screen passes where they sort of allowed him to get some momentum into the line of scrimmage and run with the football. And then when you see that, he had some kickoff returns, I think maybe a dozen in college, but when you saw him get out on the perimeter on some of those swing passes and flares and things like that and get vertical, you're like, okay, there's the kickoff, straight line speed that he could bring to the table. Kalen Black from Indiana is the other one that they've showed some interest in. He's just your classic get what's blocked back. Like he's not going to color outside the lines very much. He's very efficient. He's not very dynamic or creative or elusive or any of like the flashy stuff, but he's just going to kind of get the job done, push the pile at the end. They're looking for that true, just sort of safe third running back. I always use Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, right? Like if you're looking for if that kind of guy, then Black is probably the one. If you're looking for a little bit more pizzazz, then that would probably be Randall. If you're Josh McDaniels, McDaniels had Patterson, and I would just think that he would have some fun with a guy like Adam Randall as kind of an offensive weapon.
Yeah.
Honorable mention, Nick Singleton.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Penn State.
Yeah, sure.
I just think his brute strength and his ability to move with that type of strength is very impressive. And I mean, I think he broke Saquon's squat record, right? Isn't that what it was?
Well, yeah,
that moves my needle right there, Chris. I mean, you're out
you worry
squatting
about your needle on your own.
Yeah. Good for you. But good pulls, we'll see. And those guys that Evan mentioned, I'm looking here at the Beast Power, the rankings, and those are all, day three kind of guys. Yep. So it makes sense. The Patriots got a bunch of picks there. Let's flip over to tight end, though, and this is a position that we have been talking about all spring long. The Patriots and Vrabel have been talking about this position. They did go out and make a signing, with I'm blanking on his
Julian
name.
Hill.
Julian Hill, thank you. Maybe more of a blocker. And so you got to balance. Hunter Henry getting up there a little bit, though. You'd love to have some long-term stability there. Vrabel talked about this spring. Like, you always see these mid-round guys popping up. You got multiple tight end sets. Last year, look what the Rams did with, 3 tight ends, 4 tight ends. It feels to me like Vrabel kind of wants to get to that point. And I know we all have our favorites. And, let's just start real quick with Sadiq. And I think he's the guy that stands above everybody else. And the conversations we've all had is that it's easy to see a guy like that fit into the offense. He's probably not coming to New England. But if you could find a real move kind of a guy who's got all the all of the measurables, the build, everything. Talk about players that Josh McDaniels could have some fun with. It sure seems like Kenyon Sadiq would be one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. I just feel like this is one of the few players we talked about in PU that I would trade up for. He's a player where Hunter Henry, he's 31, but you draft Sadiq, you don't need to worry about tight end for the next 7 years probably. And I think he's plug and play, freak athlete. It'll be awesome, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Tough to see.
Yeah, no, he's definitely near the top of my list, my wish list for the Patriots. Just remembering watching, Oregon's offense in his underclassmen seasons and being like, who the heck is this tight end that keeps on just making plays all over the field, and now it's time for him to go in the draft himself. And I think the only thing that you look at with him that might hold some teams back is his size. He's only 6'3", 240 pounds, so he's not Tyler Warren. He's not one of these 6'6", Rob Gronkowski, 255 type of tight ends. He is a little bit smaller. He's probably more of a Jonnu Smith, Harold Fannin Jr. model of a tight end. But, the straight line speed is rare at that size. The ability to get down the field and stretch the seams and wheel routes, out of the backfield, off the wing, those types of things are not normal at 245 pounds. He's got some separation quickness. I think he can block a little bit better than some of the scouting reports you read about suggest. When I first started getting into his film, there were some concerns because of his frame about his blocking, but I think he's a pretty solid blocker. as well, but he won't be the prototype for everybody. He's a little bit undersized, but that I don't really care, to be honest. I mean, when you turn the film on, he's really good.
Let me just pause things for a second here. Just how do you guys feel generally about balancing the blocking and the receiving? Because there's a lot of really good receiving tight ends, and this is the game now. You need offense, and it's great. Yes, you need guys who can block too, but at the same time, I find myself going more and more towards a guy like Max Clare, and I really liked him. I feel like we spend all our time talking about Delp and Roush, and those are kind of the guys. And when I first watched all these guys, like Clare really stood out to me, and not exactly like Travis Kelce, but just he's slight, he's not thick, but he just moves like a really good athlete, and that to me is when I'm trying to give Drake May outlets and trying to give him guys that can do different things that Josh can play with. I look at a guy like Max Clare and Oscar Dell probably in that same kind of mold of, maybe didn't have the crazy production. Maybe they were limited because of the guys around them or the scheme or whatever. But I see both those guys as just having huge potential and the potential to come in and play right away and be a real weapon for Drake May.
Yeah, I think it's the question about the blocking. And I probably harp more on the blocking than most people because I think about it from a defense's perspective. And we start getting into like personnel matching of, if you're in 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, but your tight ends can't block, then like I have no reason to put base defense on the field against you. Right. So now those matchups that you're trying to create in the middle of the field against linebackers and safeties, they're not going to exist as much as they would if you have to put another linebacker on the field and take the nickel corner off. Now you're getting tight ends matched up against guys that they can win foot races against more consistently. So when you look at that sort of thing, like when you look at a guy like an Eli Stowers, for example, I think Max Clare can block like a tiny little bit. He's probably out of this group the one that reminds me the most of Hunter Henry, in terms of Delp, Roush, Stowers, Clare. I'd say Clare plays the most like Hunter Henry, who isn't a big time blocker, but can hold his own and isn't a total, non-factor as a blocker as well. I would say that, when you get to those Stowers types, or like the Triggs on day 3, I'm treating those guys like receivers if I'm a coach. And so at that point, you're not getting the matchups. You're not getting the looks that you want. Basically, you want to be able to either run the football out of 12 personnel against lighter groupings and run them over, or you want to make them react and put base defense on the field, and now you can throw it over them. And if you can't get them to react to your personnel like that, that's when you start to get into trouble. And I think that looking across the league, the example I always go to is the Buffalo Bills. Dalton Kincaid is a great player. Like, he can play. He's a matchup nightmare, but he can't block. So that why do they have Dawson Knox and Jackson Haas on their roster? Because they need somebody that can block inline to play Dalton Kincaid. So in a lot of ways, if you ask me, like Dawson Knox is a more valuable player to them than Dalton Kincaid because he can play in all situations. He can put his hand in the dirt and block. So they drafted Kincaid in the first round, and then paid Dawson Knox, and then drafted Jackson Haas because they were like, oh, crap, this guy can't do anything for us in the run game. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think that the main crux of it is the players like Dalton Kincaid have become pass-game players. Those guys are going to play on third down. They're going to play situations. They're not going to play every single down. And I don't know how much value that has to certain teams. And I think Mike Vrabel might like a guy that can play in all situations.
Yeah. Well, you got Julian Hill, so maybe you can. Chris, who you got? Give me some guys.
I mean, you mentioned Traeg earlier. I really like Michael Traeg and like his wingspan and catch radius. Like, you don't really see guys like that, I feel like. And somebody that has hands like him and can kind of see you downfield and be an actual target and a weapon. Like, I think that's such a key part in offenses today. And I think we're talking about these different guys and can help in the run game and all that. But I feel like there's a lot of value in today's offense where if you have a tight end that can get downfield and be an actual weapon and threat to defenses, you free up your other wide receivers like Kayshon Boutte, give them more looks, or like people like that who can actually step up and make more plays because people are worried about that tight end.
Yeah, Trig, who you got, Tease?
He took Trig for me, but I also had Nowakowski Riley from Indiana. I'm probably not saying his last name right, but I always like to take somebody from a championship team. But similar to the running backs, like Hunter Henry can still play. Like, he's 31, so trying to look at something that if you don't get Sadiq, something that we don't have, which is a bit more blocking. So I had him. I also had Dinkins, just a freak athlete. He's Khalil Dinkins from Penn State.
Yeah.
So
Two other ones. Like I said, we've been talking about Sam Roush. I feel like, and he's a big board guy for me. I mean, he's a great blocker. But him and Joe Royer were two guys who kind of tough guys. Royer a little tight. I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to be much of a receiving threat, but that's to Evan's point. If you're trying to find a blocker like that, to me, it's not sexy, but you get a guy like Roush in the building, and you've got that like blocking TE2 for as long as you want them, and those pieces are valuable. It seems like by the time I get to the mock drafts and I get to that point, I'm always kind of picking because of how these mock drafts are laid out. Like, and here's Sam Roush, and they need a tight end, so I got it. Yeah. I wonder if they're going to go off the beaten path and be like draft two guys on day 3 that they love, that we're a little, that we might not even mention today. I don't know how they'll approach it, but it's a really interesting position.
Where do you think the tight end selection happens,
So
realistically?
I really think the 3rd and 4th round is a sweet spot for that position, because I think Sadiq is obviously in a tier of his own. I don't know if there's another guy that I would take between 1 and 95 at that point, first round and 95. Because I'm not a big Stowers guy, as I just wax poetic about how I hate guys that can't block. So just go put your little slot receivers over there. And then, I think Delp is exciting, but he only had 20 catches last year, and he only had 70 over the course of his career at Georgia. And some of that was injury related. Some of that was role related. That is a projection. You are taking his athleticism and his frame and his athletic profile and saying that this guy projects to have a higher volume role in the NFL. So you're projecting, you're kind of hoping a little bit there. Roush, I really, really like, but I do think the arm length and the radius do show up on film at times, with his blocking and sustained skills as a blocker, his catch radius as a pass catcher, with those short arms and that short wingspan. I think it does flash at times. I don't think he's going to be a big time red zone guy, because he's not going to be able to go up and get the ball as consistently as some other guys. So to me, those guys, I think they're 3rd rounders. Like I think it's, we get really excited about these people, these players, and people start to push them up boards. And you guys mentioned Trigg. Him and Justin Jolly were considered top 100 guys when I started the process back in February. Yeah. And now all of a sudden they have trickled down to like the 4th or 5th round. Trigg is a lot to do with his personality and character concerns. Teams have concerns about his work ethic, just his overall vibe. In his character, he has some things in his past.
Take him off the big board.
Yeah, not exactly like a clean evaluation. Justin Jolly's just a little small, a little stiff. He's kind of like day 3 Kenyon Sadiq, and so I don't know how teams feel exactly about him. Eli Raridan, another guy that maybe have some concerns too about effort and physicality and all that kind of stuff, injuries. So those are guys that when I started this whole thing were either in the top 100 on the consensus board or like fringe top 100 guys that are maybe getting knocked down a little bit now for Delp, for Roush, for Claire. I'd say maybe a little bit for Jack Endries from Texas. So Endries is a guy that I really like in the 4th round. If they're not able to get Delp or Roush at 95, like Endries at 125 or 131, I think makes a lot of sense. Kind of similar to Claire in a lot of ways, I would say. Like I could probably use Hunter Henry as a pro comparison for both of those players. Yeah. Good receivers, decent speed, good knack for the position and getting open as a pass catcher, that sort of thing. And then we can get into the sleepers, then we get into the real deep cuts on day 3. But that's sort of the cluster, I think. That's sort of the stack. It starts with Delp, Roush, Claire. Then you get into, the Endries and those guys and Trigg and Jolly. And then we're out the 4th round.
I mean, just looking at how the Beast stacks him up. I mean, he's only got 4 guys cut off at Delp in between him and Jolly that's the only first day 2 guys that, the rest are all day 3 guys.
I think if you're looking to draft somebody at 63, it all depends on how you feel about Eli Stowers. If you're convinced that Eli Stowers is just going to be such a mismatch weapon for you in the passing game that it's not going to matter. And look, I watched his tape against Alabama and they threw him a shovel pass, little like RPO shovel, where they threw him the ball on a shovel pass and he took it like 40 yards, just like snaking through the defense like a running back. He's got rare movement skills. He just can't block for a lick. Like he's just not going to do any of that. So like, I kind of compared him to like a Gesicki or Rondé Gadsden, someone like that. That's really a wide receiver. So if you really like that and they decide that they really like a guy like Stowers, then he's in play at 63. I think it's a little early for Delp or Roush at 63.
Yeah, I mean, you keep talking about Stowers. I am a guy, I really like Stowers. I do think
there's a lot to like about him.
His ability to work downfield, and again, like you said, it is just turning small plays into big gains. Like, he does it really well. And I think that's a big thing. And the Patriots, I'm going to make this point because it's just kind of been bugging me for the last 5 minutes.
Let it out, Chris.
But then Julian Hill is you're supposed to be, after that signing, you're like run blocking tight end.
Yep.
And then you have the Hunter Henry, you can kind of do both, good in the passing game, good in the running game, kind of trust him with either thing.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of teams, I mean, you mentioned the Bills is a great example, kind of have that 3-tier system for tight ends. And I feel like there is value having somebody who is more of a receiver than a blocker, because you can get better as a blocker when you're a receiving tight end. Like, just like you can get better as a receiver as a blocking tight end. Like, there's ways to work on things, and that's why I feel very highly of Stowers. And I feel like there's a lot of value there, but
that you can see him come in and contribute. Whereas, certain wide receivers, especially later in the draft, like, it's hard to see their route to the field. You can see it with a move tight end.
Absolutely, and I think that the role for him, and if they feel really strongly about Julian Hill, which is what I think they do after they gave him a 3-year contract, can he be Jackson Hawes to Dalton Kincaid, right?
Yeah,
and do that sort of thing.
Saying, right.
And maybe Julian Hill is really your inline option, and like I said, situationally. 2-minute, those types of situations, 11 personnel packages on third down. Stowers is going to come in and he's basically just another receiver that you can play games with. And there's definitely value in that. I mean, his receiving skills are very, very good. And I could see that. I get weary of, you're drafting that at 63 for him to play what percentage of the snaps realistically is he going to play, and are you going to use one of your first 2 picks and a top 75 pick on a guy that's only going to play on third down? And is that really worth it? Now, if you get down to 95 and that player is still available, that's a different story. But I have to imagine, I'm not in the Buffalo Bills front office, nor am I in the Patriots front office, but I'd have to imagine if you gave the Bills some truth serum about Dalton Kincaid, they kind of regret it, right? Because, injuries is certainly a big part of it too, but, he just doesn't have a full-time role. So I think the same thing about Stowers, but there's no doubt that there's a role for him. It's just going to be complementary to a true kind of Y tight end. You're going to have both on the roster.
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap up all our predictions.
Okay, I do some day 3 guys.
Do you have to?
Yeah, I do. I have to. Okay, there's a couple of guys that we have to talk about. Marlon Klein from Michigan.
I like Marlon Klein.
I think is a big one. German-born prospect. Late to football, obviously, but really good movement skills, really good explosiveness, like especially early in the route. I thought competes his butt off in the run game. Probably needs a lot of technique work in that regard, but the effort and the finish is there. Nate Borkicker from Texas A&M, another high effort run blocker, good motor. Maybe some untapped potential there in terms of receiving ability, I would say. And then Will Kazmarek from Ohio State is another one that if you want that prototypical inline Y tight end, he's an option for you there too. But I really like Klein. I think that he's one of those guys that he's already pretty good, and he hasn't really played football for that long. So if you keep developing him and keep working with him, then it'll be fun. Plus, it'd be fun to have another German.
I know, whole market. Real quick, though, guys, we've done all these positional previews, and I know you guys were in and out on some of them, but favorite position group this year? I'll go first. I'm going to say the edge class. I mean, I just think there's a lot of guys, a lot of different flavors, and I'm excited really from day 1 through day 3 to see potential Patriots in that position group.
I'm going edge just by need. I think there's a lot of options there. You can't really go wrong. But you know me, I'm hoping we trade up. So
I guess I'll jump in. I'm going to go defensive tackle since you both said edge, but I think it's a 1A, 1B for me.
Yeah.
I think, defensive tackles are just so many beasts on the front. I mean, I love myself. A defensive
Dante
tackle.
Corleone.
So.
It depends on your, defensive tackle this year is all about the nose tackle. The nose tackle's back if you're into that sort of thing.
Right.
It's close. I would between linebacker and safety for me. I would probably go linebacker though. When you start at the top, just with Anthony Hill Jr. and C.J. Allen and Jacob Rodriguez and Jake Golday and Harold Perkins and I just think that there's a lot of talent at that position. This is one of the better linebacker classes in the last couple of years, and I feel like the league needed it. Like they needed an infusion of a good linebacker class. There's a lot of Kyle Lewis's too that can play a little bit of safety maybe and kind of cross some lines there, hybrid style. So I really like the linebackers, but Dynaman and McNeil Warren are two crushes of mine in the safety group too. So it's a good group there as well.
There you go. Well, thank you guys, everybody, for joining us here over the Patriots Draft Countdown. Got just 1 week to go before the draft, but we will have one more live hour from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. on Thursday, 4/23, the first day of the draft. Just pregame jitters, getting it all out. We'll be here getting ready for the big Patriots draft show that night. So we'll hope you join us then. Draft's coming up quick. We'll see you there.